Lonely CEO discovers amazing connection when twin girls ask for leftovers. Transformative moment. Jack Thompson, the 45-year-old CEO of Golden Ventures, stared out over the New York skyline from his office's towering windows. The sprawling city beneath felt both vibrant and isolating. After yet another grueling day filled with negotiations and endless meetings, he felt his chest tighten with suffocating loneliness. This wasn't how his success was supposed to feel. The lavish dinners, the sprawling office, none of it filled the void inside him. He hurried to his favorite Italian eatery, desperate for something familiar amid the chaos. But outside the restaurant, tucked behind a dumpster, he spotted two little figures. Twin girls, no older than 6, huddled together, sharing whispers. Their innocent, curious eyes turned to him as he approached. "Sir, do you have any leftovers?" one shyly asked, her voice barely rising above the city's constant hum. Annoyance flared within him, rippling under the surface of his polished exterior. Yet, as they eagerly described their family's struggles, their words cut through his irritation. They talked about their mom who worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. For the first time in years, Jack remembered his own childhood, marked with sacrifice. "Do you know what it's like to be hungry?" Mia inquired, her eyes wide and pleading. Jack hesitated, a sudden wave of guilt crashing over him. He thought of his own meals, extravagant and generally wasted. This wasn't just an annoyance, it was a mirror reflecting hard truths he had buried under layers of ambition. He found himself drawn to them, not for the sadness of their existence, but for a glimpse of pure, unfiltered joy. Their laughter was infectious, shattering the corporate shell he had encased himself in. In the weeks that followed, Jack returned to the alley each evening with bags full of food. He brought comfort, warmth, and, most importantly, friendship. Mia and Lily became his oasis from the corporate storm, a reminder of the humanity he had long neglected. Their stories of freezing nights in shelters expanded his reality. While his life was drenched in privilege, their laughter belied a spirit that thrived in adversity. Would he let their resilience inspire change within himself? But as Jack began to wrestle with new perspectives, a lucrative corporate merger landed on his desk. The opportunity was golden, promising sky-high profits, but he sensed it was built upon dubious foundations. Pressure swirled around him, deadlines to meet, stakes to raise, competitors to outmaneuver. Caught in the paralyzing vice of expectation, he hovered on the brink, glancing back at the twins and forward into an abyss of greed and ambition. Faced with the prospect of sacrificing his values for success, he questioned himself. What kind of man did he want to be? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the deadline pressed closer, Jack found himself steeped in turmoil. He thought of Mia's simple request for help, a plea echoing in the vast emptiness of his office. His mind raced, the chaotic thoughts melding into one burning question. What does it truly mean to be successful? In the suffocating silence of his office, he fought against the weight of his decisions. The twins' laughter felt like a lifeline he couldn't reach. The air was thick with doubt as he stood at a precipice, balancing corporate aspirations against the newfound warmth of connection. Would he choose to elevate himself over others, or embrace the uncomfortable truth of vulnerability? The shadows of his choices loomed ever larger, threatening to swallow him whole. Jack's instinct for self-preservation kicked in with a disconcerting urgency. The looming merger, once a beacon of success, now felt tainted by moral ambiguity. Ignoring it was easier than confronting the depths of his own misgivings, yet the rancor of his indecision gnawed at him relentlessly. The thoughts of Mia and Lily were intertwined with questions he could no longer silence. Their laughter replayed in his mind like a mantra, an echo of innocence that contrasted starkly with the cold calculations of his corporate life. One Thursday evening, after another long day, Jack resolved to visit the twins earlier than usual. As he approached the alley, anticipation mixed with a sense of dread. He questioned whether his newfound connection could withstand the weight of his corporate choices. Would they still embrace him if they knew about the dubious deal that threatened their world? The laughter he had savored now felt like a distant memory, obscured by his growing internal conflict. When he rounded the corner, Mia and Lily sat on the pavement, their faces aglow with enthusiasm. He opened the food bags, offering them the burst of warmth and sustenance they expected. They practically sparkled with delight, and for a moment, it felt like the burdens of the world lifted off his shoulders. He realized that in their company, he had rediscovered hope, a fleeting yet powerful antidote to his growing doubts. "Jack," Mia said, her tiny voice breaking through his reverie, "why do you always bring us food? You could just go home and eat something fancy." Her innocent question pierced through him, challenging the absurdity of his nightly visits. "It's because I want to help. I can't just ignore what needs to be done," he managed, but internally, the words felt inadequate. "But you're a big boss. Aren't you super busy?" Lily interjected, her eyes darting between him and her sister. The twins didn't realize it, but their candor forced Jack to reckon with a truth he had long concealed. He craved meaningful connections that transcended business deals. Yet here he was, contemplating trading those connections for wealth. "I used to be busy with things that don't matter," he admitted, looking down at them. "What really matters is being in the moment, isn't it?" They nodded, as if understanding the gravity of his uncertainty at a level far beyond their years. Later that night, in his opulent but empty penthouse, Jack sat in silence. The city's pulse continued unabated, but the noise had subsided in his mind. He began jotting down his thoughts. What if he could merge compassion with ambition? His fingers danced across the keyboard as ideas took shape. Plans for a new initiative to provide meals to those in need while fostering community around the company's resources. Could this vision be enough to turn the tide of his corporate identity? With each stroke of the keys, he wrestled between his ambition and his integrity, debating whether this new path would require him to step sideways from the merger or even abandon it altogether. Doubt crept in, whispering that he couldn't possibly succeed at both helping others and retaining his status as a CEO. Yet in his heart, the twins' laughter resonated with a newfound meaning. Perhaps success lay not in wealth, but in the legacy he would leave behind. It was a fragile yet invigorating epiphany that redefined everything he had believed about success. Suddenly, he understood. Choosing compassion could potentially elevate his company to heights unfathomable, not just financially, but morally. As he transitioned from contemplation to action, his resolve began to crystallize. The time had come to face the discomfort of vulnerability, to confront the choices that would define him. But with every decision came the faint yet heart-pounding question, what would his board think? As dawn approached, Jack felt a surge of determination. He had to act, but could he face the repercussions of his choices? Jack awoke to a city humming with life, yet it felt oddly distant. He stretched his arms, shaking off the remnants of paralysis that had seeped into his bones during the night. The starkness of his penthouse served as a vivid reminder of his choices. He had an awakening, but could he really transform the world he knew so well? Smoothing his tie, as he stood in front of the mirror, he confronted the reflection staring back at him. The face of a CEO hardened by years of calculating profits and negotiating deals. But beneath the mask lay the flickers of uncertainty and desire for more meaningful existence. His resolve needed to project strength, yet a current of vulnerability entwined with his ambition. Arriving at the office, he was greeted by the usual barrage of emails and corporate agendas demanding his attention. As he pushed through the glass doors, he felt a strange sense of disconnect from the world he had once cherished. The sterile atmosphere heightened his sense of isolation, a space filled. Such thoughts anchored him, pulling him deeper into an introspection that felt both suffocating and liberating. He entered the conference room, where his board awaited him. Their faces reflected a mix of expectation and skepticism, anticipation of the merger looming just around the corner. Jack's heart raced at the thought of breaking from their mold, of insisting on his newly forged values in the corporate realm. "Gentlemen," he began, pausing slightly to gather his thoughts, "I want to discuss a new initiative." Their eyes flickered, some with disbelief, others with curiosity. "While I value our present negotiations, I believe we have a social responsibility that we can capitalize on." The shock echoed around the room. "Are you suggesting we soften our stance because of some feel-good crusade?" Frank, the CFO, replied incredulously. "No," Jack said sharply, his pulse quickening. "I'm suggesting we focus on something tangible. We can use our resources to aid those in our community through meal programs, outreach, and making meaningful connections." In that moment, Jack wrestled against the self-doubt that clung like a fog. Would they understand? Moments passed like days as he surveyed their silent reactions. "Jack, that's noble," Lisa, the marketing director, ventured, "but it may not provide the shareholder value we're looking for." Noble. The word hung in the air, and he could almost hear it ring starkly against the backdrop of corporate greed. "Do we measure success solely in numbers?" he asked, a challenge firing through his veins. "Imagine if we set a standard that would lead us to increased loyalty, not just profits, but people willing to support us." The room was a battlefield, and he felt the pressure. Would they laugh him out of his own initiative? He didn't back down. The twins' laughter echoed through his mind. They saw him as more than just a businessman. Maybe it was time for him to see himself that way too. "Why not take a small step, a pilot program?" suggested Lisa, her voice low. "Something to gauge interest before committing fully." Jack nodded, feeling a spark of hope. In that moment, he realized he was willing to fight for both the merger and his ideals, to inspire change rather than simply maintain status quo. As the meeting adjourned, he sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Was it acceptance? Perhaps even tentative support. But doubt still flickered. What if his efforts were mired in corporate complacency? Approaching the window, Jack gazed at the sprawling city below, the rooftops merging into the horizon. A choice lay ahead, one that would either elevate him or consume him in the chaos of corporate expectations. The uncertainty of it all was palpable. He felt the weight of his decision settle in his stomach, the conflict between what was and what could be stirring restlessly. With a deep breath, he clasped his hands behind his back, staring out at the world of possibilities. The rough road ahead lingered, but he understood something essential. Every significant leap required an element of risk. As he prepared to return to his desk, another thought crystallized. The merger was only the beginning, not the destination. Could he truly initiate a wave of change without sacrificing his values? Clenching his jaw against the uncertainty, he resolved to find the answer, but he felt the pressure intensifying. The time to act was now. Moments later, an email came through. The board wanted a follow-up. The fear seeped into his veins. Would they seek to stifle his initiative, or would they rally behind him? With that lingering uncertainty, he squared his shoulders. The fight was just beginning, and with it, the chance to forge a new legacy. Jack leaned against his desk, fingers hovering over the mouse as he reread the email. The request for a follow-up meeting pulsated like a living thing, each word palpable with the weight of his choices. The board wanted clarity, but he felt less clear than ever. The faces of his colleagues replayed in his mind, the skepticism, the judgment, but now intermixed with a flicker of hope that Lisa had ignited. In the days that followed, Jack buried himself in research, poring over case studies of businesses that had successfully implemented social initiatives alongside their profit models. Each page offered a glimpse not only into strategies, but also into a broader purpose. His mornings transformed into a ritual filled with inspiration drawn from leaders who dared to blend purpose with profit. But when the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows crept into his office, doubt crept in as well. What if his vision was merely a misguided fantasy? He wrestled with the dichotomy of ambitious CEO and empathetic human being. The voice of reason whispered loudly, reminding him how the corporate world valued results over ideals. Could he really shake that foundation without toppling it entirely? He decided there was no harm in testing the waters. After a forgettable day of conference calls and operational reports, Jack reached out to Lisa, asking her to meet for lunch. If anyone on the board showed even a modicum of understanding towards his vision, it was her. Over sandwiches in the bustling cafe below their office, Jack laid out his ideas, feeling them out with a hopeful yet cautious tone. "Jack, it's still early in the conversation," Lisa said thoughtfully, leaning in. "But I think we need to create a connection between our initiative and our bottom line. If we can frame it as a social investment, we might get some traction." He nodded, taking her words to heart. A social investment? It sounded so persuasive and easy to sell. But then an unsettling thought broke through. Was he merely packaging his values to placate the board? That night, unable to shake off the emerging doubts, Jack took a long walk along the riverbank. The moon cast shimmering patterns across the water. Each undulation stirred his thoughts. He observed families gathered on the shore, sharing laughter and stories while sipping cold drinks and feeding the ducks. They seemed wholesome. His life had become distant from such moments. Could his vision lead to creating environments where real connections flourished, even if it was as simple as encouraging shared meals? In the midst of this reflection, a couple of children spotted a photo on his phone, a quick snapshot of a community meal he had volunteered at weeks earlier. "Did you feed the ducks?" one girl asked, wide-eyed, her twin sister giggling beside her. "Not exactly," Jack chuckled, struck by their unfiltered curiosity, "but we did share a lot of meals." "What happened to the leftovers?" they pressed, innocent questions sparking an unusual connection. "They were shared with people who needed them," Jack replied, suddenly realizing how deep his motivations ran. The girls nodded, impressed, as if they grasped the significance of sharing, not just food, but experiences, memories, and a sense of purpose. That fleeting moment crystallized a revelation in Jack's mind. What if he could harness the spirit of those children, not just in his initiatives, but in his leadership style? He needed to engage genuine connections, to weave empathy into the fabric of his company's culture. The light at the end of the tunnel flickered brighter. Returning to his penthouse, Jack felt eager to draft a more detailed presentation for his follow-up meeting. He envisioned not just a pilot program, but a framework for tangible change rooted in shared experiences, igniting passion within his team. As he jotted notes, a realization struck him. True leadership would demand vulnerability, his willingness to be transparent about his quest for meaning among profit margins. With the new day promising possibilities, Jack sat down for the first time, ready to embrace openness and authenticity in a boardroom that had been starved for both. But then, a new email notification made his heart race, a warning of potential backlash from investors about his newly proposed direction. The perpetrators would be relentless. Staring at the screen, he felt the duality of his path collide, the struggle between ambition for profit and the yearning to inspire. The moment of truth loomed ever closer. The choices he was about to make could redefine his legacy or obliterate it altogether. Could he remain steadfast in his vision upon this unexpected confrontation? The answer was just out of reach. Jack felt the weight of the message pressing down on him, its implications swirling in his mind like a tempest. Investors were not the type to entertain whims. They demanded data, success, and a clear path to profit. Yet, Jack envisioned a future where his passion for meaningful impact coalesced with the bottom line. Holding the mouse tightly, he took a deep breath and allowed the stillness of a late night in his penthouse to guide his thoughts. He vowed to channel the inspiration he had gleaned from the children, an innocent curiosity that fueled real connections. What had they taught him? The true essence of sharing, a vital human experience that transcended mere transactions. If he wanted to lead effectively, he needed to be brave enough to intertwine those lessons with his strategies. Walking away from the corporate world's cold calculations felt daunting, yet he sensed a depth of purpose behind the prospect. He set to work drafting a detailed outline for the board meeting. Each point reflected his aspirations, building a culture of empathy, fostering community engagement, and leveraging social initiatives that produced measurable returns. As he wrote, he allowed himself to confront the potential backlash he might face. The investors' finances were tethered to cold metrics, and they would hardly respond to warm ideals without a calculated approach. He realized he needed a foundation that resonated with their desires while still embodying his vision. In the quiet of the early morning, fueled by fresh coffee, Jack studied the trends he had researched. He scrutinized statistics from progressive companies that had embraced social values and subsequently thrived. Their financial reports spoke volumes, convincing data that captured the interest of shareholders. Staring at the graphs, he could feel his resolve strengthening. Perhaps he could take risks while simultaneously appealing to traditional business frameworks. Jack's internal dialogue wrestled with reality. Was he simply trying to comfort himself with a sweet narrative, or did he truly believe in the marriage of purpose and profit? He made a mental note to refine his presentation, ensuring that metrics illustrated the journey he proposed. With this new approach, he envisioned not only convincing the board, but also fostering an authentic wave of enthusiasm among his employees. Days turned into nights as Jack pored over his presentation, perfectly marrying ethos and data. Each slide became a testament to his commitment, a bridge between his core belief and the demand for profit. The haunting doubts concerning investor backlash remained, but every moment of clarity he experienced reinforced his convictions. There was strength in vulnerability, a concept he was beginning to accept as a pillar of his leadership style. As the day of the board meeting approached, he felt the familiar adrenaline that accompanied such pivotal moments. The stakes had never been higher. He was ready to lay bare his soul for scrutiny and possibly ridicule. But now an unlikely ally had emerged within him, a tenacity rooted in the support of those children, wrapped in warmth and innocence. Just as he completed his final preparations, the phone buzzed with a fresh email notification. Panic stirred within him as he opened it. The message read that one of the largest investors in the company was requesting an emergency meeting. Their dissatisfaction with the company's projected profits was clear, and it appeared they would no longer tolerate delays or unexplained directions. Jack sank into his chair, fear and guarded determination battling in his chest. Confrontation loomed ahead like an approaching storm. The critical moment was here, and he braced for impact. Would he stay the course, or would he buckle under the pressure? His heart raced as he pondered the stakes. The path he chose could alter lives, his own, his team's, the company's, and those within the communities they served. The resilience of his newfound vision flickered within him, urging him to stand firm against the impending tempest. As the clock ticked down to the meeting, Jack could feel the transformative potential of his journey. However, he realized that he might soon confront not only the fears of his investors, but also the deepest parts of himself. The time was swiftly approaching to face the true consequences of his aspirations. Jack arrived at the conference room several minutes early, an uncharacteristic choice driven by a desire to gather his thoughts in silence. The sleek, glass-walled space radiated a sense of authority, yet it felt stark and intimidating. The round table, dressed in high-end modernity, loomed before him, filled with sharp suits and sharp eyes that pierced through him before he even spoke. He took a moment to breathe deeply, centering himself before the impending storm. Thoughts of the children surfaced again, their laughter echoing in his mind. He remembered how their simple requests had unveiled a shared humanity amid the complexities of adult discourse. Could he hit upon that same earnestness now? The door swung open, and one of the investors, Arthur Reynolds, strutted in first. His presence demanded respect, and he was accompanied by members of the executive team. As they settled and began exchanging glances, Jack could almost taste the tension. He felt their unspoken disdain like a cloth wrapping tightly around his chest. "Good morning, everyone," Jack began, forcing warmth into his tone, though doubt threaded his every word. He glanced at his presentation slides, an armor crafted from numbers and narratives. But did they genuinely convey his vision? Warm ideals had filled his inspiration, yet in this moment he feared that those values might collapse under scrutiny. He pressed on, presenting data points that showcased flourishing companies who wed social responsibility with profitability. He quantified the link between corporate engagement and tangible returns, showcasing evidence to justify the foresight of blending purpose with profit. With each slide, he sensed skepticism rippling through the room. Arthur's narrowed brow signaled a storm brewing. "And what makes you think our shareholders will embrace this agenda? The market only rewards hard numbers, Jack," he cut in, frustration lacing his words. "Arthur, I believe in the shift of corporate responsibility," Jack responded, consciously steadying his voice. "Investors today, especially in this climate, are looking for companies with a long-term vision, ones that offer authenticity alongside profit. We can achieve greatness without sacrificing our commitments to societal well-being." Jack felt a mixture of determination and desperation as he fought for his ideals. The process felt raw, yet he could feel himself unraveling as he sensed their pervasive doubt. What was lost in corporate ventures often transcended monetary returns. It encompassed lives impacted and futures altered. Was he capable of articulating this struggle? As he spoke, a flicker of realization hit him, ignited spirit spurring clarity. He connected the children's ideals once more to the lessons learned from the children. He remembered how simple their joy had been and how deeply it resonated. If he could embody their authenticity, could he not guide this confrontation into something transformative? Suddenly, he shifted his strategy mid-discourse, weaving a personal narrative, a tale of a community event he had spontaneously attended in the past month. He narrated the profound exchanges shared during a food distribution where, among feeding families, he had encountered the nostalgic smiles fostered by leftover meals. Sincerity grounded his words as he conveyed the joy and connection experienced through shared sustenance. The room quieted, their business-like demeanor slipping momentarily, allowing momentary space for his vulnerability. He could see thoughts stirring, questioning the barriers between hard metrics and the heart of community. As Jack concluded his presentation, the unease in the room coalesced with a palpable shift. He felt exposed, yet strangely liberated. The vulnerability of his message had unraveled layers to an unseen rapport, one that contradicted the cold calculations typical of high-stake negotiations. But just when he thought a flicker of understanding existed, Arthur's reply crushed that hope. "Numbers, Jack. Without solid return projections, we can't justify this direction." Disappointment washed over Jack, thwarting the nascent connection he had endeavored to establish. The realization hit him like a boulder. The summit of his vision appeared distant and daunting. As the meeting came to an end, Jack's heart raced with disappointment and uncertainty. An ally had emerged in his vulnerabilities, but the battle for recognition and connection remained fierce. It became increasingly clear the stakes had soared, intertwining personal growth with professional responsibility. With a heavy heart, Jack left the room, grappling with newly seated doubts. The conscience of investors clashed against the pressing impulse toward transformation. He had unleashed honesty beneath the corporate facade. Now, could he sustain this inner battle and continue fighting for a vision that perhaps only he could see? Armed with uncertainty and conviction, he stepped into the hallway. The echoes of the empty conference room lingered in his mind. Would he continue on this path even as doubts clouded the horizon? Perhaps the confrontation was only beginning. The corridor felt expansive yet confining as Jack strode with heavy steps, wrestling with a drift of frustration and doubt. Every window glazed a vision of potential that now seemed obscured by insurmountable obstacles. Doubts whispered in his mind, each one planting seeds of insecurity about his aspirations. Had he fought hard enough? Did he even belong in this world of high stakes? Jack remembered the children's laughter, that purity of need he found embedded in their requests. He'd reached for deeper explanations during the meeting, but perhaps misplaced the foundation of his argument. Shouldn't he focus more on assimilating numbers with these human experiences? Could he transform the vision in his mind into something tangible that investors would not only recognize, but also embrace? Determined to explore solutions beyond self-doubt, Jack decided to revisit his presentation materials. What if he could marry emotion with metrics to weave a storyline of human need into the fabric of hard-line business principles? The question lingered, could he reframe the narrative without losing authenticity? He retreated to his office, where the artifacts of his labor surrounded him, whiteboards crammed with flowcharts, papers layered across his desk like forgotten dreams, Excel sheets detailing projections for the next quarter. The quiet of his space contrasted sharply with the chaos of the previous meeting. Jack inhaled, closed his eyes, and visualized the children's joyful faces once more. What if he approached this struggle as a learning opportunity? Jack grabbed a notepad and started jotting down ideas, connecting numbers to stories, beginning the synthesis of corporate responsibility and profitability anew. What if, he muttered to himself, I share real stories of individuals affected by the outcomes of our strategies, highlight their lives to make these numbers concrete? Each idea flowed faster than his hand could write, compelling him to imagine robust models that highlighted successful companies intertwining social impact with financial consequence. In that moment, the complexities of his situation began to clarify. His voice would not just be that of a single CEO, it could represent these myriad unseen lives, potentially translating metrics into humane stories that ignited empathy. Jack had learned the art of storytelling, once forgotten in the hustle of annual reports and board meetings. The narrative became his vision's vessel. Time slipped away as he dove deeper into research, pseudonymously interviewing nonprofits and influential figures within the industry. Each encounter resonated with the truth of what lay behind corporate strategies, what it meant for those deeply affected by decisions made in distant conference rooms. Confidently standing among the stories, Jack extracted the essence of each conversation, an interwoven tapestry to present before the board again. As he pieced together these narratives, he found his apprehension replaced by a growing sense of purpose. Feeling emboldened, he set a date for a follow-up meeting with the investors to present his re-envisioned proposal. There, it dawned on him, he wasn't merely advocating an ideal, he was on the threshold of evoking change, first in himself and then within the walls of the corporate world. As Jack finalized the details of his presentation, exhilaration coursed through him like an electric current. But alongside this newfound ambition, nagging questions still lingered. What if the investors push back harder this time? What if his improved approach failed to resonate as he envisioned? In that uncertainty, Jack caught a reflection of his internal struggle, the battle to remain hopeful amidst skepticism, and the desire to forge a path that aligned with his beliefs. The moment to face those doubts was drawing near, and yet the exhilaration of transformation beckoned him forward. The evening darkness settled as he prepared to close the office door, ready to take the first steps toward his next confrontation. For Jack's journey was far from over. It began to dawn upon him that beyond every endeavor lay a deeper revelation. About himself, akin to the children's laughter, a profound connection waiting to be discovered. Now, would that connection reveal itself in the next meeting, or would he find himself grappling with newfound challenges unforeseen? As the light of dawn spilled across the skyline, casting elongated shadows in Jack's office, he felt an invigorating rush, a blend of anticipation and trepidation. Today was pivotal. He was set to meet the investors, their skepticism looming larger than the skyscraper surrounding him. Yet, Jack couldn't let their past dismissals or his own doubts dissuade him from the path he had forged through careful storytelling. He arrived early, his heart pacing, almost matching the rhythm of the clatter of keyboards and hushed conversations in the boardroom. Jack took a moment in solitude, intentional breathing flooding his mind with clarity. He saw the children's faces again, those vibrant eyes full of hope, and it emboldened him. Once the meeting began, Jack's presentation unfolded with every intention to connect human experiences with the cold metrics of profit and loss. The projector illuminated the slide, showcasing powerful stories interlaced with tangible data. There they were, narratives of resilience, transposed elegantly over concise charts illustrating growth and, more importantly, positive social impact. He felt a current of energy course through the room, a potential shift in perception hinging on his words. As Jack spoke, however, the apprehensive silence from the investors weighed heavier than the intricate spreadsheets he'd prepared. They wore expressions that were unreadable, yet unmistakably skeptical. Questions began to flow, each one sharp and methodical, probing the foundation of his argument. Would emotional resonance hold water against the unyielding mandate of profitability? Is this merely a narrative shift, or do you have projections to back this new direction? The lead investor queried, narrowing his eyes as if challenging Jack not only professionally, but personally. It struck a chord. Had he been naive, overstepping proper boundaries with fluff? Jack could almost feel the ground shift beneath him. The stakes had ascended beyond his initial ambitions. He had to dig deeper. It's not just about numbers, he replied, feeling the fire within him push through. It's about creating a legacy, showing that our initiatives can empower communities, drive loyalty, and ultimately increase our value. Profit isn't just a bottom line, it's a testament to the lives we touch. His voice rose with conviction, a visceral energy reflecting the transformation he had undergone in recent weeks. But the lead investor was undeterred. Our shareholders expect a return, not a compelling story. Can your model actually sustain the demands of our financial framework? Jack hesitated, internally grappling with the intersection of his passion and pragmatism. Could he bridge the divide between emotional tales and cold facts? Just then, a thought struck him, a new angle, something he had considered but never fully fleshed out. Let's not forget, maintaining social responsibility can yield economic benefits. Companies who integrate these values often outperform their competitors in the long term. I have examples. He shifted in his seat, eyes now glinting with inspired determination. Despite the pushback, Jack felt fortified by the narratives he had woven. He drew from the stories of individuals whose lives had changed through philanthropy and corporate commitments, compelling the investors to visualize real-world applications of his theses. As the din of the conference room hovered around him, he felt invigorated, no longer merely defending his vision, but embracing it. Yet, as he finished, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The investors retreated to murmur among themselves, Jack's heart pounding in the quiet aftermath. Had he made his case sufficiently compelling, or merely fanned the flames of doubt? When the lead investor returned to the center of the room, Jack's breath caught in his throat. The outcome hung in the balance, encapsulating not just his proposal, but the reflection of all he was striving to become. The time has come to face the consequences of this vision. The investor paused, eyes narrowing once more. Jack braced himself for the verdict, but couldn't shake the thought that perhaps this was the very moment where he discovered just how resilient his narrative could be, both for himself and the company itself. The meeting was concluding, but a newfound urgency pulsed within him. Whatever the outcome, Jack knew he was stepping deeper into the unfolding complexity of his journey, one that could change the trajectory of his life and perhaps echo beyond the boardroom walls. However, as the executives voiced their reservations, Jack couldn't help but acknowledge a shifting tide inside himself, a newfound understanding that between his dreams and reality, a robust confrontation lay ahead. Would he emerge from this encounter with the affirmation he desired, or would he find himself faced with challenges that would demand even more profound growth and resilience? Jack remained at the conference table, the room suffocatingly silent after the investors hurriedly departed to deliberate. The weight of their skepticism pressed heavily against him, but within that pressure, something began to shift. He ran his hands through his hair, a subtle gesture that belied his growing frustration. Everything he had worked for hinged on this moment, this fragile intersection of hope and reality. He stared out the window, the city sprawling beneath him, a canvas of life abuzz with ambition and uncertainty, much like himself. Each skyline silhouette mirrored his internal conflict, sharp, imposing, yet oddly alluring. Jack was reminded of the children, their eager faces sparking a flicker of clarity. But was that enough to propel him through this brief yet blistering storm of doubt? As the minutes stretched on, Jack felt a familiar urgency within. Instead of succumbing to despair, he focused on his next steps. The dialogue swirling in his mind shaped not just numbers, but also identifiable paths toward rebounding from possible defeat. He wasn't merely a professional seeking validation. He was a visionary standing on the precipice of self-actualization. Outside the boardroom, the stark atmosphere shifted. Colleagues were wrapping up their days, exchanging casual banter, while Jack felt isolated in his whirlwind thoughts. Should he reach out for support or keep pursuing his vision in solitude? Would expressing vulnerability to his peers undermine his authority, or would it resonate on a level they could appreciate? Each option twisted and turned in his mind, leaving him wrestling with vulnerability and ambition. With resolve, he pulled out his phone, hesitating over the decision to contact a mentor who had always encouraged him to embrace a more human touch in leadership. After a moment's pause, he dialed. The impact of his mentor's voice was immediate, a steady anchor to his fading confidence. The words flowed like a balm, reminding him of the essence of leadership, connection, not just profits or the allure of high-stake investors. Jack, if you want to foster growth, start with listening. There's profound power in understanding the people you aim to lead, his mentor advised, blending insight with encouragement. Jack absorbed those words, contemplating how they applied not only to his team, but also the investors awaiting his response. Re-entering the boardroom, he was met with the remnants of tension still lingering in the air. Fueled by his mentor's wisdom, he decided to address the investors directly, not with numbers, but by recounting the stories of the individuals benefiting from their investment. He felt the narrative shift within him, transforming into something more tangible, a mission brimming with purpose. "I'd like to invite you to see our impact firsthand," he proposed. "Let's meet with the communities we aim to support and show how your investment leads to real lives being changed. Let yourself connect with their stories." This time, he delivered the words with a soft yet commanding tone, creating an inviting bridge to their skepticism. The investors exchanged glances, their expressions transforming from doubt to intrigue as Jack laid out specific plans for engagement. He could sense the atmosphere thawing. It was no longer just business, but a collective exploration into the human condition intertwined with profitability. The moment of unity felt electric. Jack realized he wasn't just pitching a project, he was igniting a vision interlaced with purpose. But beneath his growing excitement nested a nagging thought. What if this wasn't enough? What if reaching out only opened a lingering wound of personal setbacks? As discussions began to turn toward the viability of his proposal, Jack felt a surge of nervous energy. Would he persuade them enough to turn their initial skepticism into support? The clarity he had discovered amid the chaos now hung delicately in the air, tinted with the promise of something transformative, but tinged with uncertainty. He stole a glance at the investors, studying their reactions, each face a puzzle he needed to solve. His heart raced with the realization that this moment held more than just potential for his project. It represented a critical exploration of his growth and adaptability. What revelations would emerge from this juncture? As Jack concluded his thoughts, the lead investor's voice broke through his reverie once more. Your ideas are compelling, assuming you can show them. Impact. It was both a challenge and an invitation, a test of his conviction. Jack felt a burgeoning sense of responsibility settle over him. This was beyond wishes for acceptance. It was now about catalyzing change, a reaffirmation of his journey thus far, but also an acknowledgement of challenges that lay ahead. What connections would he forge, and what would they reveal about his vision moving forward? And as he prepared for their response, he realized he stood at a renewed beginning, a fresh confrontation with his resolve, one that would compel him to step even more fervently into himself. In the weeks that followed Jack's courageous pitch to the board, he found himself navigating a transformative journey that did not just reshape his career, but his very perception of what success could mean. As the investors mulled over his proposal, Jack committed himself to developing community initiatives that could tangibly connect his company to the meaningful change he envisioned. The more he engaged within the community served through his outreach efforts, the more clarity surfaced around his personal motivations. Working alongside Mia and Lily, he got to witness the joy that simple acts of support could bring. They were not mere subjects of anecdotes. They were living reminders of resilience and hope that fueled his resolve to redefine corporate values. Their laughter echoed in his mind as he immersed himself in the nuts and bolts of establishing meal distribution programs. Jack fostered relationships with local nonprofits, streamlining logistics that would allow Golden Ventures to share its resources effectively. As he collaborated with his team on implementing these initiatives, their initial skepticism dwindled, replaced by a shared passion. Jack had not only emerged as a leader willing to confront challenges, but as an individual focused on elevating lives. Jack also took significant steps to incorporate the narratives from the volunteering efforts into his corporate messaging, as the juxtaposition of numbers and stories flourished cohesively. His initiative gained traction, bolstered by real-life impact, and boosted employee morale. The initial push from the board hadn't just shifted perspectives. It emboldened Jack to reshape the company culture into one that valued connection alongside profit. Then, one sunny Tuesday, the investors reconvened, a hush of anticipation vibrating through the boardroom. Jack cleared his throat, clutching a fresh set of presentation slides that further refined his vision. Today wasn't simply a follow-up. It was an opportunity to solidify his growth, to prove that he could leverage compassion and commitment as cornerstones for corporate success. He opened not with figures, but heartfelt testimonies, stories captured in videos that showcased Mia and Lily interacting with family members who benefited from their programs, along with interviews from community leaders who articulated the significance of Golden Ventures' involvement. As he shared their moments, emotion flowed through Jack's words, igniting a sense of purpose among the board members. "I'm not just here for profit margins," he insisted, his confidence solidifying with every syllable. "I'm here because I believe we can redefine success." Together, these initiatives are not merely charitable, they're strategic investments. He noted an underlying sense of energy shift. Eyes that once bore skepticism now reflected curiosity and engagement. Some even nodded as they absorbed his call to blend authentic corporate values with monetary goals. It was contagious, the unfolding realization that they could pioneer a new paradigm, one that their shareholders might appreciate, not just for its yield, but for its integrity. Jack concluded confidently, "Let's serve our communities with respect and intention. This is our moment to forge a legacy that endures, one that the next generation of leaders can aspire to." After a fervent discussion around potential outcomes, the lead investor leaned in, eyes gleaming. "This is quite ambitious, Jack. If we're looking for real impact, show us the metrics. Show us that it's viable." The clarity surrounding his path solidified as responses ensued. The willingness of the board to engage in dialogue about this dual vision, their acceptance of the intertwining of purpose and profit, was a watershed moment for Jack, a true testament to his transformative journey. When the vote passed unanimously in favor of his initiatives, Jack felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. They were choosing not just a change in direction, but a fresh paradigm that resonated with his newly forged values. He had achieved what once felt like an insurmountable task. It was no longer just about him as a CEO, but about embracing a wider purpose, a complex blend of humanity within the corporate framework. Standing in the hallway after the meeting, Jack embraced a profound realization. He had transformed from a lonely, ambitious executive into a leader who championed connection, embodying the very ideals he had witnessed through Mia, Lily, and countless others. This achievement wasn't merely professional recognition, it embodied growth rooted in authenticity. His heart swelled with pride, not for the accolades of others, but for understanding that success grew beyond mere financial gain, revealing itself instead in the joy he'd helped cultivate in the lives he touched. In his newfound resolve, Jack Thompson became a relevant figure in the corporate landscape, embodying the essence of true leadership. Now it's your turn to join this journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now for more inspiring stories, as only true fans of personal overcoming understand the importance of supporting this channel. Don't wait even one more second to share.